Welcome to Sidequests, the podcast that explores the strange, surprising, and often forgotten rabbit holes of history. Because sometimes history isn't what happens when people are trying to change the world, it's what happened when the world was making other plans. I'm Keith Conrad. Some people leave behind a legacy, others leave behind a statue or a scandal. General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, he left behind a leg, actually several. Santa Anna was one of the most fascinating and baffling figures in 19th century Latin American history. He rose to power, fell from grace, came back again and again. He fought wars, lost territories, gained enemies, and declared himself the Napoleon of the West. But perhaps his most enduring and bizarre contribution to history was what happened after he lost a limb. Because in 1842, after an amputation during battle, Santa Anna decided that his severed leg deserved a state funeral with soldiers, a procession, cannons, the works. And that wasn't even the weirdest part. Today's story is about a man who loved pageantry, reveled in contradiction, and somehow made one of history's strangest funeral processions all about himself, even when he couldn't stand on both feet. This is the story of the lavish funeral of a pickled general. It's hard to overstate how much of a chaotic force Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna was in Mexican history. He was a general, a politician, a dictator, and, by his own estimation, a national savior. But to his critics, he was an opportunist with a flair for drama and a habit of losing important wars. Santa Anna served as president of Mexico 11 times. That's not a typo. 11. Though sometimes for just days or weeks before staging his next comeback. He's perhaps most infamous in the United States for his role in the Texas Revolution. He led Mexican forces at the Battle of the Alamo, which made him a villain in Texas lore, but not long after he was captured at the Battle of San Jacinto and eventually released after signing treaties that ceded Texas. Fast forward a couple of years to 1838, and Santa Anna is once again leading troops, this time against the French in the little-known but wonderfully named Pastry War. Yes, that was a real conflict. During a skirmish near Veracruz, Santa Anna was struck by cannon fire and suffered a severe wound. The result? Amputation above the knee of his left leg. For many, this would be a grim turning point. For Santa Anna, it was an opportunity. He declared himself a martyr for the nation, a living symbol of sacrifice, and then as one does, he kept the leg, preserved it, kept it under guard, and a few years later, he planned a full military funeral for it. Because if you're Santa Anna, losing a limb isn't just a tragedy, it's political theater, and the performance was just beginning. In 1842, a few years after losing his leg in battle, Santa Anna was back in power again, and with the kind of flair that would make even the most eccentric Roman emperor raise an eyebrow, he decided it was time to honor his fallen limb, so he made it everybody's problem and planned a state funeral. Not a symbolic gesture, not a quiet internment in the family crypt. No, Santa Anna gave his amputated leg a funeral with military honors. The leg, by then embalmed and preserved, was placed in a fine glass coffin and paraded through the streets of Mexico City. There were speeches, there were priests, there was even a gun salute. The leg was then buried in an elaborate ceremony at the Santa Paula Cemetery. Santa Anna, of course, attended. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't humble, and it definitely wasn't normal. But in the twisted logic of Santa Anna's political theater, it made perfect sense. Glorify the sacrifice, magnify the man. At least for a while it worked. The public, many of whom still saw him as a war hero, played along. But as always with Santa Anna, the goodwill didn't last. A few years later, after yet another political upheaval, he was overthrown again, and his enemies came for the leg. Literally. A mob dug it up, dragged it through the streets, and tossed it away in protest. From national treasure to trash heap in just a few political cycles. And that perhaps says as much about Santa Anna's career as it does about the foot in question. One minute he's a war hero, the next he's a national punchline, and his poor leg, caught in the crossfire. Santa Anna's leg may have been buried, dug up, and disgraced, but his story didn't end there. After his overthrow, he was exiled multiple times to Cuba, Jamaica, Colombia, and eventually New York of all places. But like a boomerang with a uniform, he kept trying to return to power. And just when you think the story can't get stranger, it does. In his later years, Santa Anna turned his attention to chewing gum While in New York, he tried to market a sticky substance made from the sap of the sapodilla tree called chicle. He wanted to sell it as a rubber substitute. It didn't take off for tires, but it did eventually become the base for modern chewing gum, thanks to an American named Thomas Adams. So yes, the man who lost Texas, gave a leg a funeral, and led Mexico more times than anyone wanted, also helped invent bubblegum. His legacy, like his life, is all over the place. As for the leg, well, no one knows for sure what happened to the original. Some say it was burned by protesters. Others claim it was preserved in alcohol and hidden away. One of his prosthetic legs, captured by American forces during the Mexican-American War, is still on display in Illinois. Yes, really, go visit the Illinois State Military Museum if you want to see it. Meanwhile, replica legs have popped up in museums across Mexico, each one claiming to be the real one. In a strange way, the leg has taken on a life of its own, an amputated limb turned historical artifact, legend, and political metaphor. Santa Anna died in 1876, broke and largely forgotten. But his leg and his legacy march on in infamy. It's the rare case where one footnote of history is an actual foot. Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna was a man who never did anything halfway. Not war, not politics, not even amputation. He turned a lost limb into a symbol, turned a funeral into a spectacle, and turned his bizarre career into something that still fascinates, frustrates, and entertains nearly 200 years later. His leg may be gone, his power long since buried, but somehow his story still has legs. That's it for today's Sidequest. If you enjoyed the detour, subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend who loves history's odd corners. And remember, when life knocks you down, say with cannon fire, just be sure to plan the funeral properly. This has been Sidequests, because history is what happens when the world is making other plans.